Welcome into another video. We are back with some more draft grades today, breaking down the NFC East and the AFC East. If you have yet to check out my previous video before this, I did the AFC and NFC South. Let's go ahead and get right into it with the New York Giants, and I gave them an A. That's the highest grade I've given out so far. I don't think it'll be the highest grade overall. Kicking off with the Abdul Carter pick, I gave that an A+. I mean, best player available, unreal talent, A+ pick. Kayvon Thibodeau, I think, should be on his way out. I think pairing him with Brian Burns is going to be phenomenal. Thibodeau, maybe even somebody you could argue kicking inside. Overall, love the Abdul Carter pick. Love the selection. I give that a 5 out of 5. Carter's awesome. The Jackson Dart trade, I gave B. Dart is cool. He does have the star traits. Brian Daboll obviously sees something in him, but, he was my QB3 behind Shedeur Sanders. And I know Shedeur Sanders slipped to the 5th round, and I might sound like Mel fucking Kiper right there, but I would have maybe gone with Shedeur Sanders. I think he has the highest floor, safer pick. The trade overall was good. You didn't have to give up a massive haul to jump back into the 1st round. Didn't have to give up a future first. So I like it overall. Solid, a solid B+ is what I gave it. I gave it a B+. Darius Alexander, that's a solid A move, really good value. Their defensive line is now, one of the best in the NFL, in my opinion. And then their second 5 out of 5 selection, Cam Skattebo. Cam Skattebo was my running back 4. Move over Tyrone Tracy. Skattebo, a guy is going to be able to carry your entire workload in the running game. A guy who's going to be getting just chunk after chunk after chunk. I know it's a bit of a downgrade. You go from Saquon Barkley to Tyrone Tracy last year, and now Skattebo. So he's not going to have those plays, but this is a guy who's just going to wear down defenses. I easily thought he was worthy of a 2nd round pick, late 2nd, early 3rd kind of value. Great pick. Getting him in the 4th round, 5 out of 5, A+ selection. And then Marcus Mimbo, offensive tackle, another A move. That's a great steal. I don't know how they got 3 straight steals like that. I mean, going Darius Alexander, a player who I thought was very much worthy of a 2nd round pick in the 3rd round. Skattebo, another guy in the 4th round who I thought was worthy of a 2nd round pick. Mimbo, I think is how you officially pronounce it. Another, I thought, day 2 player. He's going to have potential to have immediate impact in year 1. Would have liked to see them add a wide receiver at some point. Overall, a phenomenal draft, an A-worthy draft for the New York Giants. Moving on to the Dallas Cowboys, another team that I also gave an A to. I thought they also were able to find phenomenal value across the board throughout their entire draft class. Kicking off with the Tyler Booker selection, I gave that an A-2. Smart pick. Killer, just a little high for a pure guard, in my opinion. Does not really have the opportunity to kick it outside. Overall, was the pick. Zach Martin retired just only a month and a half ago, so this needed to probably be the smartest selection for them. I'm sure Cowboy fans will disagree and say they want a wide receiver. That's understandable. Like the Tyler Booker pick. An A move again here for Donovan Izuruwaku. This was easily a 1st-round player, drafted at 44. It's just edge isn't a massive need for them, but great value. He's going to be playing on the opposite side of Micah Parsons, and it's going to do them wonders. Siobhan Revel Jr., easily an A+ selection for me, a 5 out of 5 pick, in my opinion. Cornerback is a big need for the Dallas Cowboys, and getting Siobhan Revel in the 3rd round is a steal. He was in my top 5 corners of the class, and I think that's unreal value. He has a very, very high ceiling, and he's a guy who, in my opinion, is going to be able to have some day 1 impact over there. Unreal athlete. It's just the limited reps in Division 1 and an ACL injury. So falling at 76 in the grand scheme of things probably consensusly makes sense, but I find this to be phenomenal value for Siobhan Revel Jr. And then grabbing Jadon Blue in the 5th round. I like that pick. My only complaint was it wasn't DJ Giddens. I like DJ Giddens more. Overall, good pick. And then, adding some value and experience in the back half of their draft. Shamar James, a Johnny Cornelius, both guys, a lot of reps under their belt, and then getting DT trench depth. I love it. Overall, really good draft for the Dallas Cowboys. I gave them an A. Moving on to the Washington Commanders, they came away with a solid flat B for me, and it starts with the Josh Connerly selection, which I gave a C+. I don't really understand that move for them. I'm not saying that Connerly wasn't necessarily worthy of a back end of the 1st round pick, In my opinion, he fared more as an early day 2 guy. And Josh Simmons was still on the board. It wasn't a massive need for them. I think Connerly is more of a pure offensive tackle. I don't know if he's a guy you can kick inside. I'm sure you can if you really want to. But Josh Simmons was my left tackle number 2. Him being available that late, passing up on him, and it wasn't a massive need for them. It's a C-plus move for me. I would have liked, Izuruwaku there ahead of him for sure. I really like the Trey Amo selection in the second round. I think he's a guy who fits Dan Quinn perfectly. Athletic, fast, aggressive. He's going to be a big addition to their secondary. And then Jalen Lane, I would have preferred Jalen Royals there, but, Lane makes sense looking at their roster. You already have a premier yak guy like Deebo Samuel, so Lane adds a lot of speed and burst, stretching out the field to your wide receiver room. And then they didn't have many late round picks because of some Laramie Tunzel and Marshawn Lattimore trades, but I thought they were able to add some nice special teams value. So an overall B, really the Josh Connerly selection weighing them down heavily here. I was not a fan of that for Washington. Moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles, who I gave an A-2. It's hard because they don't really have many needs, but this is more value-based in my opinion. Jihad Campbell, phenomenal selection, phenomenal value. I'm sure, his versatility is going to fare very well with defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, who in my opinion is the best defensive mind in the game. You could use him off the edge, very similar to like what you're going to be getting with Nolan Smith. Off the edge, off ball, he can do both. So I'm loving the value there at 31. My least favorite selection, though, did come in the second round for them. I thought it was a little bit of a reach, but it was their biggest need. It was hard to give a C to a day 2 biggest need pick, but in my opinion, Makuba was a reach here. Watts, Bowman, both still available. I don't know how many times I've said that over, this video and the last video. Big fan of Watts and Bowman. Both easily should have been selections here over Andrew Makuba. But that's the thing, is that it wasn't really a safety run either. So I don't understand the reach there. It wasn't like they were going bang, 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 safety. Like, okay, we have to go Makuba here. I thought he was a day 3 guy. I know it was the last pick of the second round. You could argue he's a third round pick, but wasn't a huge fan of that. Watts, Bowman, both would have been preferred there. Ty Robinson, really good selection. They lost Milton Williams. These are just depth guys for the Philadelphia Eagles because, like I said, they really don't have needs. I don't think Robinson has an elite ceiling, but I think he has a really high floor. I think this is going to be a guy who you could see be used as a day 1 depth rotational piece, playing a good amount of snaps. I just don't ever see him transcending into an elite player. And then they had 7 picks in rounds 5 through 7. Overall, I gave him an A- just because I love the Smail Mondin Jr. pick, love the Cameron Williams pick. Easily my favorite day 3 selections. And then they drafted 3 developmental offensive linemen, Mac McWilliams in the 5th, and then you get Kyle McCord, a developmental quarterback. I think when it comes to those round 5 through 7 picks, overall, O-line, just depth at positions of need. O-line, D-line, DBs, wide receivers, always fare out the best. Getting a developmental quarterback is always nice as well. So overall, really good draft per usual from Howie Roseman. Now moving on to the AFC East, we are going to be kicking it off with the New England Patriots, who I gave a flat A to, kicking it off with the Will Campbell pick. I really wanted to give this a 5 out of 5 because if you want to ask me who I think has Hall of Fame potential in this draft class, Will Campbell's the top of my board. But I say that because I view him as a guard. Now, getting a Hall of Fame guard at pick 4 is not the end of the world, but that's the only reason it's not an A+ is because reaching for a guard at 4 is not overly the smartest decision. If he does end up being a left tackle, that's very fair for an offensive tackle, but I just feel like this is a little bit maybe of a reach of a guard. In my opinion, though, he was the best player available. Overall, really love the selection. I think he's going to do wonders protecting Drake May. So can't really complain. But after that, we go back-to-back 5 out of 5 selections for the New England Patriots. 3 down back with an elite speed, absolute playmaker, and Travion Henderson at pick 38. And then getting Kyle Williams at pick 69. That is my favorite pick of all of their selections. This, in my opinion, was a day early day 2 guy. I know he fell in the early 3rd round, but he was my wide receiver 5. Henderson was my RB3. So they get back-to-back A+ picks there, and Kyle Williams was drafted as wide receiver 9. You get value like that, a guy who I thought was worthy of an early 2nd round pick. You love it. You love it. The Patriots offense is clear here that they are building purely around Drake May, investing into a potential really good left tackle in Will Campbell, if not a phenomenal, in my opinion, Hall of Fame potential left guard. Travion Henderson, he's going to take over that running back room, and Kyle Williams, I think, has the opportunity, while Stephon Diggs is still, returning from the ACL injury, to be the wide receiver one there and learn from him. And then in, the end of day 2, coming away with the best center in the draft in Jared Wilson, another A move there. The Patriots had one of my favorite drafts. Craig Woodson, I thought, was a reach. Billy Bowman Jr., people. Billy Bowman Jr. still available. Why am I, the only one that's complaining about this? Craig Woodson, I think it's a reach. I think it's a reach at 106. Billy Bowman was the play. I didn't think, Craig Woodson was worthy of 106 to begin with. Wasn't a big fan of that, but you come away with Joshua Farmer at 137, a round 3 guy, in my opinion. They killed it. They killed it. The only reason their score is probably not an A+ is because rounds 5 through 7, I already marked them at a B+. You came away with a long snapper and a kicker. I get it, maybe drafting the kicker, but you draft a long snapper as well. Sheesh, not a fan of that. But Farmer, Wilson, Williams, Henderson, Campbell, all phenomenal guys. I love it. I love it. I love it. Moving on to the New York Jets, who I gave a B+ to, starting off with Armand Membo. You could argue that they could have gone Tyler Warren or Colson Loveland here, and I do understand that. I think Tyler Warren fits that Aaron Glenn mentality maybe a little bit better than Loveland would have, but I understand going, with Membo here. He has an elite ceiling. I think, he's more of a raw prospect who's going to take a lot of time to grow. Overall, it could be the right pick. I think it was the right pick, but it's hard for me to give it anything higher than an A-. Mason Taylor, a really nice selection as well. It makes up for not going tight end at 7 in the first round. Adds a nice weapon to the Jets offense. He's got that NFL blood in him as well, being the son of Jason Taylor. I like the pick. I like the Azariah Thomas pick. I think that's a really, really good value for him. He's got day 1 potential. I don't think his ceiling is as high as some of these other cornerbacks. There's a reason he wasn't on my top 5 list. He's, on a lot of people's top 5 lists because of, how good of a season he had last year. But his athleticism, I think, just, lowers what his ceiling is. But I do think he has a very high floor. Their worst pick by far was Arian Smith. I don't know how he went in the early 4th round. It really is besides me. His athleticism is the only thing saving that pick from being a D. I hated that selection. That really dropped their score down. I didn't really like the Malachi Moore pick that well either. I love me some Alabama DBs, but I thought that was also a reach. I thought they had a pretty rough day 3. Wasn't a fan of the Arian Smith pick. Wasn't a fan of the Malachi Moore pick. Overall, rough day 3 that dropped their score down to a B+. Moving on to the Miami Dolphins, I gave a solid B to, and a lot of that is going to be pretty heavy on the Kenneth Grant. I gave that a B-. Walter Nolan, Derek Harmon, both better players in my opinion. Kenneth Grant was my defensive tackle 4. So going him at 13, that's just a reach in my eyes when I think Harmon and Nolan were much better players. And then the Jonah Savaiinea pick, I really like that pick, A-. Offensive guard was by far their biggest need in this class, and landing him was the right pick. Miami, missed out on Booker at, with the Cowboys selecting him at 12. So they had no choice but to go offensive guard here. If it was not addressed in the 1st or 2nd round, there would have been problems, in my opinion. I really wanted them to go Booker or Zabel at 13. Zabel, you could argue, is maybe a slight bit of a reach, but not in this draft class. But I'm happy that they came away with Savaiinea. And then 6th day, 3 picks for Miami. Ali Gordon, Quinn Ewers by far being my favorite selections. And then my boy Biggers in the 7th round. Really good size and athleticism for a defensive tackle, but he is a massive project. But I like that in the 7th round. But Ewers in the 7th round, really good pick. Ali Gordon adding some power to your backfield to match the speed of A-Chain. I like that in the 6th round. Overall, not a great draft, in my opinion. A solid B. I do like Kenneth Grant. I just think it's a reach. And wrapping it up with the Buffalo Bills, I gave them an A-, kicking it off with a solid flat A on the Maxwell Hairston selection. The only reason it was not an A+ in my eyes because Will Johnson was still on the board. Maxwell Hairston, though, in my opinion, could have been the right pick. You know, really good energy. He's going to fit well in Sean McDermott's scheme in Buffalo. I love me some Maxwell Harrison. He was my CB4 overall, and I thought he was worthy of a first-round pick. The TJ Sanders selection, I gave a B2 because I thought the trade was pretty heavy, giving up that extra fourth. You're moving up 15 spots, losing 10 spots, giving up overall 2 second-round picks for pick 41 and 72, and you gave up a fourth on top of that, and then you jumped up to get a defensive tackle when I thought there were better defensive tackles available there. So I didn't really like that trade for Buffalo, but I'm not overly upset with the TJ Sanders selection. I just thought, Shamar Turner was available. That probably would have been the play. I was happy that the Bears ended up coming away with him to begin with, but a 5 out of 5 selection here, A+ value for Landon Jackson. In my opinion, Landon Jackson was an early second round player, and you came away with him in the early third. That's worthy of a 5 out of 5, considering it is an edge, a premium position like that, and it is a need for the Buffalo Bills. So they did a good job at bolstering up their defensive line, and it didn't stop there. Another A pick for the Buffalo Bills, getting Dewan Walker, defensive tackle out of Kentucky, at 109. It's always going to rely on depth in Buffalo. So I love this selection. I would have maybe liked to see a wide receiver here, but I'm getting the notifications right now that Elijah Moore is on his way to Buffalo. So can't complain there. I thought Dorian Strong was really good value. Lunt was even better value in the last 3 rounds for them. But overall, A-. Landon Jackson being their best selection, in my opinion. Maxwell Harrison, Deon Walker, really good picks. Their defense is getting more and more revamped. Everybody saw the decline coming for them last year. Didn't happen. And this is, even better for them because now they're using all this draft capital that they have to invest into building up their defense. And that's the best thing for them because Josh Allen can single-handedly carry their offense. I'm not worried about that. A- for the Buffalo Bills. And that is going to wrap up another video and my AFC and NFC East draft grades. Leave a comment below on what you thought of my grades. Make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for tuning into another video. Peace.